Hi, welcome to lesson 2 on our population topic. Hopefully, you should be joining this lesson having done the first lesson, which was provided by the Oak National Academy. The activity is quite simple. All I need you to do is to play and listen to this video. You're welcome to make notes if you'd like. There will be a chance where I ask you to pause the video and do a small activity. And then at the end, there will be 3 review questions. It is those 3 or the answers to those 3 questions that I would like you to upload onto Satchel One Show My Homework at the end of this video. So we've been looking on your first lesson at something called population. It's a bit of a recap. I thought I'd just go over a definition with you. So population is the amount of people living in a certain area. It can be measured in lots of different ways, such as the world, a country, a city, or even a county. So, for example, if we were to take the world population is a little over 7 billion people. But obviously, we can break that down further into a country. So the UK is looking at sort of 68 million now. We can look at a city. So Liverpool, for example, is about 400,000 people. And we can also look at a suburb as well. So if we were looking at maybe a smaller area on the outskirts of Liverpool, we could measure the population of that as well. And the term population is really, really important because it's going to pose huge challenges for our future because our population is growing at a very, very, very fast rate. And that is going to have a huge impact on countries, in particular, those developing or those LIC and NEE countries. There's a little map here, a little graph rather, that shows population from 1950 all the way to 2050. And you can see that if I was born in the 1960s, I wasn't, but if I was, the population at that point would have only been about 3 billion people. So for some of your parents, or definitely grandparents, when they were born between maybe the 60s and the 80s, for the most part, the population of the world was only about 3 or 4 billion people. This year in 2020, we are edging towards an 8 billion people total. So the last sort of 50 years, the population of the world has literally doubled. And you can imagine the problems that might cause. I always use the analogy of thinking that you're in a classroom. And say you're in a classroom and it has 30 people in it, and then all of a sudden, over a very quick space of time, there's 60 people in that room. And it's really very difficult. How do you feed that number of people? How do you house that number of people? How do you provide services for that number of people? And essentially, this topic is we're looking at, well, okay, that's a problem. Where are these people going to live, and what problems or what challenges is that going to pose for them? As we move into the future, it's predicted that past 2040, moving to 2050, the population of the world will reach 9 billion people, which is obviously a huge, huge amount. That's 2 billion people to what it is now. In the Oak lesson, you saw this word population distribution. So we've got that total population of the world, which we just discussed is about 7.5 billion people. Population distribution is about how they are spread across a given area. So, for example, if the UK's population is 75 million people, and let's say there are 100,000 square miles in the UK, an even distribution would mean that every single square mile of the UK would have the same number of people in it. If I was giving out some sweets to a class, and there were 30 people in the class, if I was to distribute those sweets evenly, I would give everybody 30 sweets. However, population is not distributed evenly. In fact, as we're going to look at now, some places end up with a greater share of the population than others. So, for example, it would make sense to us that maybe Liverpool would have more people living in it than the Scottish Highlands. Or maybe London would have more people living in it than Cornwall, which is a predominantly rural or countryside area. And how that population is distributed changed on a lot of different scales. So that's looking at a national scale. On a global scale, if you want to pause the video and have a little think about this, what countries might have a larger proportion of that world population? Okay, hopefully you've had a thought about that. The first one that springs to mind for me would be China. China, the most populous country in the world. You might also have India as well, places like Pakistan, all of which have a huge population, and therefore their distribution of the world population would be greater. We'll look at two more key terms now. And when we look at population in more depth, we also see this term density come up. Now, you might have seen the term density used in science. And in science, the more dense something is, the greater the mass, the more heavy it is. And it's the same principle in geography. But essentially, when we look at a population, some parts of the world have far more people living there than in other areas of the world. So let's take this little picture here. This picture on the left is Hong Kong. That is taken from of Victoria Harbour, a very famous viewpoint indeed. And essentially, obviously, you can see that this picture here looks very, very different to this picture here. Just looking at the buildings, I could probably guess that more people were living in this place here than this place here. And the better way of saying that is using these words densely or sparsely populated. So, for example, densely populated means lots of people living in an area of land per kilometre squares, and sparsely populated is an area with very few people living in it. So, if you're all very tightly compact and close together, like in a city, you are densely populated. If you are, there's very few people living there, or there's lots of space, you are very, very sparsely populated. So if you look at my little chart here, this is a kilometre square. So in theory, if I walked from here to here, that'd be a kilometre. Then from here to here, that'd be a kilometre. It's quite a big thing. And each mile represents 10 people. So on my left picture, I've got 7 smiles, which would relate to 70 people. And as you can see, those 70 people are occupying the same space, this one over here, that might be a lot higher than that, might be closer to 200 or might be closer to 300 or 400 people. And that's what density basically means. So, for example, if I'm these people here, I might have a lot more space, a lot more land than these people here. It doesn't mean they're necessarily squished together, but that should make sense. If you're thinking of this last picture here, all those people are living in these tower blocks here. So if you actually take that land per kilometre square together, those people are very, very tightly packed in. They don't have an awful lot of space around them. It doesn't mean they've got no space, obviously, but it means that there's more people crammed into a smaller area. On this one here, this is more like our first little diagram, and those people would have a lot more space around them. The way to visualize this is, okay, if I have my house in Liverpool, I might have neighbours very, very close to me, next to me, opposite me. If I lived in the countryside, I might not have a neighbour for a mile. I might not have another neighbour for 400-500 metres, and therefore I'd be sparsely populated. So, I'm going to show you some pictures. This links back to our Africa topic. So you can have a little pause and think about it. Would this image be sparsely or densely populated, and why do you know? Okay, I would say that is definitely sparsely populated. I can tell I cannot see any human settlements in that picture. There might be some people living there, but if there are, they would be very, very sparse. There'd be very few people living in that area itself. Bonus point here, you can answer questions at the end if you can name me the biome in this picture. That's in Kenya. We've looked at that in the Africa topic, and that would be very, very sparsely populated. On the flip side to that, hopefully you should be able to guess from this that this is a much more densely populated area. And I can tell that because I'm looking at these taller tower blocks here. I'm looking, I can see houses in the background, even though it's not the most clear picture. And I can definitely see that lots of people are living there and they're much, much, much closer together than they would be in that first picture. That's also in Kenya, but that's in Nairobi. That's a city in Kenya. So cities, like I said, tend to be more densely populated than non-cities. Okay, so I'd like to pause the video here, please, and you can draw a rough copy of this table. I don't need you to upload it, but you're welcome to if you want to. So, the factors on the bottom, there are 9 factors there that would decide whether an area would be densely populated or sparsely populated. What I want you to do is draw a rough table and then see if you can match them into the right area. So, for example, lots of jobs available would go in the densely populated column. So there's lots of jobs, people would move to that area, and therefore the population would be more dense. So pause the video, have a go, and then unpause it when you're ready. Okay, hopefully you've had a go at that then. So let's go through them. So lots of jobs available would make it very densely populated. Good educational facilities would also make it quite densely populated because, again, if there's good schools, good universities, more people are going to go to that area and be more dense. Hilly and mountainous region would be sparsely populated, and that's because it's very, very difficult to build settlements on a hill or on a mountain. Therefore, there'd be a lot fewer people living there per kilometre squared. Extremely hot or cold weather, I think we're going the sparsely populated bit as well. We saw in the Africa topic that if the areas that are in the desert biome would tend to be less developed, tend to be less populated because humans can't live in extremes. So if it was a mild temperate climate, it might be more densely populated. That's definitely sparsely. Limited access to good healthcare is definitely sparse as well. Fertile soil, good for farming, is densely populated. If the soil is fertile, it means you can grow lots of crops, and therefore, if you can grow lots of food, it's going to encourage a larger population to be more dense. Low lying flat land, that's obviously the opposite of the hilly and mountainous option. That would also be densely populated. The majority of our largest cities on the earth are on low lying flat land. It's easy to build on, and it also means it's usually close to a river as well. And that's this second to last one here. Easy access to clean drinking water would encourage a densely populated area. And the forest or steep mountains making internet and communications hard, that would be sparsely as well. Because if you've got a forest and you can't get the internet, people might choose not to live there, and therefore it might be quite sparse from that. Obviously, you're going to have some people that might like that, or some people that don't really mind, but we're thinking generally on the whole, the majority of people wouldn't choose to live there, so it might end up being more sparsely populated. So that's ended me talking. There are 3 review questions now. I want to upload these on either a Word document, you can write them, take a picture, I don't really mind. So the questions are: describe the changes to global population since 1950. To answer that question, you need to use the graph on the second or third slide. Using the words dense or sparse, describe the population density of St Helens. That's a difficult question because there's no real right or wrong answer. If you're using the words, it doesn't matter if you're kind of in between there. So if you think it's kind of some parts are dense, that's fine. If you think it's really sparse, as long as you tell me why, we'll see how you get on with that one. And the last one, explain 2 reasons why an area may be densely populated. So you're telling me, okay, from that last activity you've just done, what are 2 reasons why an area is densely populated? And then you have to explain it to explain why that would make it densely populated. So, for example, if it was the opposite question and it was why an area is sparsely populated, I might say hilly and mountainous is the reason. And to explain that, I would say when it is hilly, it's difficult to build settlements, and therefore less people would live there and it'd be more sparsely populated. So have a go at those questions, upload them, and then we're done.